Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. It is September, which means it is time to start some Halloween projects. I can't wait till October to start my Halloween projects because they won't be done by Halloween. So we're gonna start today. I want to do some applique, some Halloween applique. I have two different fabrics. This one I got last year and I used this already in a quilt. And then I have this other one I'll show you in a second. But what I wanna do is I want to cut right along the edge of all of these, different shapes here. This is really cut into, so let's see if I can find something for you to see. So for example, to cut right along this skull, right along the edge. We're not gonna do the needle turned. If you did the needle turned, you'd wanna leave a little bit of space along the outside of the skull, but we're gonna cut right along the edge. Here's the other fabric that I have. So this one I got last year and used, and it's really similar to this one that I got this year and I haven't used. So we're gonna cut, this one has even, more defined shapes that I think will be really cool. So we're gonna use both of those. But what I wanna say is that what we're doing here, the process that we're gonna do here is pretty much the beginning of quilting. Quilting began with big, huge pieces of what's called chintz fabric, really floral, decorative, big pieces of chintz that they would make a big blanket with. Now the chintz fabric was incredibly expensive, and so what people found they could do is they could kind of expand that yardage if they cut pieces out of the chintz and then appliquéd it onto another piece of fabric. And so they could kind of stretch out that chintz fabric more. Now what that ended up turning into is blocks, and so they would take blocks, pieces of fabric, square pieces of fabric, appliqué the cutout pieces of chintz onto the blocks, and then piece the blocks together. And those were kind of the very first ever quilts. So we're gonna do that today. Let's take a look at the fabric and I'm gonna show you how we're gonna cut out these pieces. We're gonna use Wonder Under. You can also use fusible interfacing. You can also use no interfacing and then just sew fabric to fabric. And so maybe we'll try a little bit of that too. But I think we're gonna have more success with the Wonder Under and the fusible interfacing. So let's do it. So I'd like to start with this piece here, this skull, with the fortune-telling ball here. I think that's really cool. So what I'm gonna do is, and I think, while I'm at it, I think I'll cut a big enough piece of Wonder Under to maybe get all the way over to these letters. I won't be able to cut each individual letter out and applique it, but I could maybe cut this piece out. So maybe we'll try that. So I'm gonna cut a piece of Wonder Under. Let's see. It'd also be great if I could cut out some of this down here. So I'm gonna use my regular craft scissors to cut out this Wonder Under here. And this Wonder Under you can get at really any craft store. I just got this one at Joann's. And there's kind of a silky side and a rougher side, and you want the rougher side to be ironed onto the back of the fabric. Okay, so I have the Wonder Under, you can hear it crinkle, underneath my fabric here with kind of the rough side facing up. And I'm going to iron my fabric until it heats the Wonder Under and attaches the Wonder Under to the fabric. So I ironed the Wonder Under onto it. So this is all stuck on here now. And I'm gonna turn this piece of fabric over and cut out this piece that has the Wonder Under so that I can kind of have a better sense here of the pieces that I have to work with. Here's my piece here that I have to work with. I'm gonna move my pressing mat, just get it out of the way, because the next part is we just need to cut these pieces out, which is kind of the fun part here. I'm gonna start with the skull and this fortune ball like we talked about. I'm gonna take my small scissors here and I'm gonna cut this into two pieces. So I'm gonna have this piece here that kind of includes this hand, and then the skull, which includes this hand. Let's start with this one. I'm gonna cut as close to the edge of the image as I can, all the way around. That looks awesome. Let's do the same thing with the ball. I have here my two pieces, and let's just talk through for a minute how this is going to work. For example, I'm not exactly sure what background fabric I'm going to use, but I may use this. So if this is our background fabric, and these are some of our pieces, the idea is that you can kind of place your pieces around a piece of fabric, and we used the Wonder Under, so the back right now is not sticky, but there's a piece, it's like a sticker where you can kind of peel off the back when you're ready to adhere it, and it won't be sticky until you heat it. So you peel off the back, you put it down, and then you use your iron to press it, and then it will stick to your fabric, at which point you can top stitch along the edge. So that's the general plan, but before we get to that, I just want to cut out a ton of pieces, and we're going to make these quilt blocks of all different kind of images, Halloween images, and then we'll put those quilt blocks together into a quilt. So this is the fun part, because you can do this just in front of the TV, in front of a movie. Just prepare a whole bunch of fabric with the Wonder Under on the back, and then you can just take your fabric and sit there, you know, listen to the radio or whatever, and then just cut around all of your different pieces. Here are the pieces that I've cut out so far. I do want to do some actual piecing around my blocks. So for example, maybe some half square triangles or some diamonds. So it's going to be these appliqué quilt blocks mixed in with piecing. Like I mentioned, I cut right along the edge of most of these so that I can just sew top stitch right on top. But some of them I felt were too small. So for example, this, if I were to cut this out and then tried to top stitch on it, I think I would lose some of the image underneath the thread. So for this one, I left a little bit around the image, and that way I can top stitch onto the background, onto the gray. I don't know if I'm going to like that or not, but I'm going to give it a try. I have a ton of skulls in this fabric, the fabric that I have been cutting out of. I think it would be really cool to do, you know, maybe even like a whole border just of appliquéd skulls on there, just kind of, or sashing or something, just a ton of these different skulls. And I do even have skulls on this other fabric that I haven't even cut into yet. So I'm going to keep going. This is the next piece of fabric that I'm going to just put the Wonder Under on and then cut these pieces out. So I'll have more skulls, I'll have another cat, then I'll do this one, which will have the dress. This is a pretty big piece of fabric that I'll do that has the Ouija board and the hand. And I'm not sure if I'm going to use the pumpkin or not, but I may. Also, some of these pieces that I cut, you know, these images out of, this still has the Wonder Under on the back, aren't full images, so I can't use them. You know, it's like half a dress or part of a pumpkin. And so I'm going to put these aside. I am going to use these pieces. We'll do something creative with them later, not in this particular project, but a different project. I didn't use the trick or treat. I'm going to save this. I might use the trick or treat, but I don't think it really goes with the quilt that I'm making. So I'm not going to use that now. The spider I did have in whole. I could cut that spider out, which would be cool, but I actually don't want spiders on my quilt. The image of spiders. It kind of creeps me out. It's a little freaky. Not in a good Halloween way, but kind of in a scary, it's like scare me while I'm trying to watch my TV show under the blanket, right? So I'm not gonna do the spiders. I have my pieces cut out here, and I have run out of Wonder Under. So what I'm gonna do, I'd like to start working on some of the other fabric now, the newer fabric. So I'm gonna use some single-sided fusible interfacing. So for that, because it's single-sided, instead of like with this where I would peel off the back, stick it on with heat, and then it would be stuck, what I'll have to do is I'll have the fusible interfacing will be attached to the back of the fabric, just like this is, but it won't be able to then stick. I'll have to use a little bit of glue and a dab of glue to hold it down. You don't need to use glue, you could just kind of pin it, but I think I'll use glue and then I can top stitch around. As you can see here, I've cut out a piece of the fabric and a piece of the interfacing. I'm going to put the interfacing on the bottom. and then put my fabric on top. So the interfacing, just like the Wonder Under, the top has kind of this rough texture and then the back is much smoother. So you want to have the rough side up. Lay your fabric on top and we're gonna iron this, which will make the fusible interfacing adhere to the back of our fabric. This is now attached to the fusible interfacing. I'll do the same thing where I'll cut out all of these different shapes. It'll be interesting to see how using the single-sided interfacing will compare to using the Wonder Under. They are fairly different products, and that will be good to know for future projects. Here are the new pieces that I just cut out, and I think they're looking pretty good. As you can see, some of them I went right up to the edge, and then some of them I gave some breathing room. I think these would be really cool cornerstones. The other thing I was thinking is that this is a piece from the other material, but this rose, where's the rose? It's from this one. You could kind of put it on his hat. Isn't that awesome? I love that. And then similarly, the other thing that was from the new fabric are these bat wings. And what you could do is you could take this piece here. I'm thinking about making this kind of my center block, part of my center block, is you could put the bat wings kind of on either side of these guys, which I think looks really awesome. So I might do that. So I've cut out quite a few pieces. I need to cut out a ton more, but before I do that, I want to figure out what my background is going to be, or backgrounds, because I do want to start trying to sew some of these pieces on to see how it goes, because that might affect how I'm cutting them out once I start to sew them on. So I'm going to take a trip to the quilt shop because I'm not crazy about any background fabric that I have on hand. So I'm going to do that and I will be right back. I'm back from the quilt shop and let me show you some of the things I got. I thought I was going to go for kind of more of a modern vibe. I initially was going to use like these kind of fabrics for accent pieces of the quilt. And I was really just looking for kind of a main piece of the quilt because this one didn't quite work. I thought this was what I was going to use. But I have gone in a totally different direction. Instead of those fabrics, I got totally new fabrics. And I'm going kind of with the Civil War recreation fabric. Some of these are Civil War recreation, some of them are not. But I thought that these would go really nicely because that's kind of like how these pieces look, right? I mean, they look old-fashioned, like with the apron and kind of this hue. So I got all of these new fabrics. Let's take a look. I think that the one that I'd like to be my center block is going to be this one here. And before I say that, the other thing I wanted to say is that I got this fabric here, which is very much like a chintz kind of looking fabric, like I was talking about at the beginning of the video. And this is what they used to do. They used to cut out these pieces and applique them on to quilt blocks and then sew the quilt blocks together. So I kind of wanted to just get this and give it a shot, and maybe, I don't even really know what I'm thinking, but maybe like cut out a piece and then, you know, somehow incorporate it into, it might not work. I might forego this, but I want to try it. I want to see about that. But anyway, to start with, I got this, and I want this to be, I think, my center block. So if I take this guy here, let me get a bigger piece of this. So if I take like this guy here, and then, you know, add on like the wings, which we talked about. I think this is looking pretty cool. And then, you know, if I had some pieces of this, I could kind of put them around the edges or something. So I think what I'm going to do now is just cut out a piece of this fabric that I need to be larger than I think. And I'm going to just sew this onto the middle of it, maybe not sew the wings on yet. Actually, I think I'm gonna go ahead and just sew those wings on. I'm gonna just do it, pull the trigger. But let me show you the other fabric that I got to go with this fabric. For things like cornerstones, I thought this could be good. And I had mentioned maybe doing something like that for a cornerstone. So that could be kind of cool. This stripe, this is kind of like a French stripe, it looks like to me. A Paris stripe. So most of these, I think this is Civil War recreation, this one's Civil War recreation, this one is, I think, and then I'm not sure about the other ones. So here's another print. So some of these will be able to go on, like that blends a little bit too much, so that wouldn't work. So some of them will work and some of them won't. And it will kind of just be a question of experimenting with these pieces to see what looks the best. So, we'll have to see. But I think I'm excited about this project. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be fused in different ways because the wings are done with the single-sided interfacing, and this group is done with the Wonder Under. The funny thing is, so when I was at the quilt shop, I had a couple of these pieces with me to kind of compare to some of the fabrics, and the lady was asking, what I was doing with these, and I, explained my process or whatever, and she thought these pieces were really cool, and she suddenly kind of stopped, and she was like, oh my gosh, she's like, this whole time I thought that like these people were part of a quilting circle, which I thought was so funny. And I thought, how like amusing would it be to put like a little quilt in the middle of their quilting circle? So I thought that was kind of amusing. But let me cut a piece of this and then we'll fuse this on. I cut this to be a 12.5-inch square, and I'm gonna kind of just eye this. I kind of see this fabric here as a stripe, if that makes sense. You kind of decide if you want it to go horizontal, these wavy lines to go horizontal or vertical. I'm going to put them vertical. And what you do is you kind of make a little rip. So I just made a little rip there. I don't know if you can see that. And at the rip, first of all, you want to make sure your iron is on. And at the rip, you kind of peel this off. And this is not sticky yet, but it will be sticky when I heat it. So I'm gonna just kind of eye this, maybe take a ruler and make sure that it's the same amount. So it's about 3.5 on that side. Ooh, let's move it over. See, it's always good to measure because eyeing things isn't always great. That should be good. And then do the same from the top and bottom. Okay, so now I'm ready to heat this. This should now be secured on, which it is really well. You could probably pull it up if you needed to, but that's really nicely on there. I did get a little bit of water spots from my iron from the steam, but that's okay. So now I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine. I put black thread in. You could really do a variety of different threads. You could do like a cream, which would blend in nicely, and I have a feeling when I'm done with this, I'm going to wish I had done a cream, and even as I'm saying that, I'm feeling like I should put a cream in. But I'm gonna do black. You could also do gray, but let's see how the black goes. Hopefully it's not disastrous. And I haven't done a ton of this kind of thing before, so hopefully it goes well. Here we go. I'm kind of just getting as close to the edge as I can. I think that's looking pretty good. I had a little bit of trouble around the hair. I got a little too far in, but since it's hair, you can't really tell. Same with her. So I think I'm gonna kind of go back up here and do those pieces a little bit more. Let's now put the wings on. I'm gonna do one at a time. I have my glue stick here. This is fabric glue, and I use this for my English paper piecing, but I'm gonna try it on here for this project. This is a piece of the backing. I'm just going to use it so we don't get glue everywhere. So I'm going to put this glue on the back all over. And Now let's stick this where we want it. How about like that? And then I'm going to let it dry for a second. Now, I kind of wish that I had more Wonder Under and that I had done these in the Wonder Under, because then I could do both. The Wonder Under is so secure, it just secures these on so fantastically that I could put, you know, I could design this whole block with the Wonder Under, heat it, and then it would be stuck on there enough that I could kind of mess around with the fabric and sew it on instead of having to do like teeny tiny pieces like this. So I think going forward, I'm going to go get more Wonder Under and use that instead. But glue on the pieces I've already done with the double-sided interfacing are fine for now. Also the double-sided interfacing, it's just not as thick. So this was done with the, single-sided interfacing. So this was done with the single-sided interfacing, and you probably can't see the difference. This is done with the Wonder Under. This is much thicker. This is more like paper, so it's easier to cut around. This is still very fabric-like, so it's a little bit more difficult to cut, even with the fabric scissors, but I think this is dried on here enough. Let's sew this on. Okay, here we go, getting as close to the edge as possible. And these have some pointy parts. The tips of the wings are very pointy. So I'm gonna have to kind of totally change the direction of the fabric to get the point. And I can tell you that the wings are already moving around under the sewing machine. The glue is not sticky enough to make these work as well as the Wonder Under. So I'm definitely gonna go get more of that Wonder Under. So I've kind of stopped here. I didn't finish this wing. I'm going to seam rip this wing off because if you can see, the edge of it is just looking really frayed. And I actually don't mind that frayed look. A lot of this, you know, with the applique, since it's not needle turned, will fray a bit, but it just doesn't look as good as I think it could. I think I'm going, so this came out of the fabric that I have a lot of. And so I do plan to go get more of the Wonder Under tomorrow, cut out more wings with the Wonder Under, and then see if that goes a little bit better. So it'll just be a couple seconds for you, but it'll be tomorrow for me. I got more Wonder Under last night, and I went ahead and put Wonder Under on the back of some fresh wings here and top stitched those on. I also went ahead and redid all of the pieces that had been done with the single-sided interfacing, and I did those with the Wonder Under instead as well. So these are kind of my pieces up here, and these now all have the Wonder Under on the back, and I am going to continue to cut out more pieces. This one over here is kind of interesting. So this came out of the same kind of fabric that this one. This one has the Ouija board letters, but I actually really like it with just the skulls. And I thought for the kind of outside of the quilt, if I kind of did like a swooping like that with these skulls, so I might cut the skulls out of that piece. What I want to do next is to put some Wonder Under on the back of some of this fabric and then cut out the pieces of one of these flowers, a couple of the flowers, and then try and kind of situate those around the edge of this block. And then ideally, I think this block in particular, what I'm considering to be the center block, would be finished. I loosely cut out a couple of these pieces here. I also have some bigger ones. And I think what I'm gonna do is leave a little bit of space around the black and not try and cut. And for example, this piece coming off here, I might not even include that. I could just cut around and come down here and you wouldn't even notice. You know, it might make this process a little bit easier, but I'm gonna leave a little bit of space and then I'll top stitch with a cream. I may put another one of these exact pieces down here and then another one of these exact pieces up here. This is all kind of just an experiment. So if I don't end up loving this project at the end, I'm okay with that. This is kind of more about the process. I have one of these kind of longer pieces, two of these pieces, and then two of these pieces. Let's lay these out and see if something makes sense. And I can always cut more off if I need to. This one might just be too long, so I either have to cut something off, and this is kind of a deep curve here, so it doesn't really go against the curve of the center image. about something like this, where I would have to cut 2 more of these, but if I put these 2 together, and then one of these kind of on each side here, and then did another pair down on the left, I'm gonna try that. I have my other pieces here, and these are so fast to cut out. With the Wonder Under, it's really like cutting through paper, so I don't mind cutting out more than I need because it's quick. So if I put these kind of here, like that, that's an option. I also cut out enough that I wanted to see how it looked. Oh, I didn't cut out enough. I would need an extra 2. I didn't count correctly. But I could do something like that, but then it gets too close to his wing and this, well, let's see about that. That looks kind of good. It is awfully close to the seam allowance. Maybe that's better, just to keep it simple. I think that looks great. Let's get that thread out of there. I'm pretty happy with that, I think. So let's peel off the backs. So I'm going to make sure before I add the heat that these are exactly where I want them. I've peeled all the Wonder Under off the back. I've placed these exactly where I want them to go. And now I just need to heat the whole thing with my iron to secure it to the fabric, and then I'll top stitch these on. I have cream thread in my machine, and I'm just going to slowly go around the edge as close to the edge as I can. I'm going to try not to go over any of the black print, which I've already done. So this is not going to be perfect. It'll be interesting to see how this turns out. Oh, still going over the black. I didn't leave myself a lot of cream border. I left just a tiny bit, so hitting that mark is going to be tough, and this might be a learning experience for next time, where I either cut right up against the black and then just sew on the black line, or I leave myself a little bit more room on the outside. This block is finished. I think it's looking pretty good. It does still, to me, feel like it's missing something, but maybe with the border, I think part of that has to do with the fact that it really is black, white, and gray, is making me feel like I need some color in there or something, but I think it'll be okay. I do have some color in kind of some of these other pieces, some of this orange, so I think that'll look nice. But here's kind of a close-up of the stitching. You can see it's not perfect, but it's fine. I think, you know, I think it looks better than I thought that it was gonna look, and this went faster than I thought as well. So I'm gonna end this video here, but I've decided to make this a little bit of a series. So we're gonna keep going, we're gonna keep making blocks, putting them together. I wanna do some piecing of different types, definitely continue on with the applique, but I don't totally know where this quilt is going, which is kind of fun. It's kind of a surprise, but I love my first block. I can't wait to use more of those applique pieces. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.